we don't have a right to act like this around the world. We're supposed to be a nation among nations, not a nation above nations. And they used to at least lie to us in the past and say that this is good for the world and we're spreading freedom and democracy. Now they don't even bother to lie. Now it's naked, rank, disgusting imperialism where they say, we're going to take the oil. And the point is that we're going to take the oil. We're going to take the minerals. We're going to take the precious metals. We're doing this for our corporations. We're doing it for the Epstein class, the billionaires. And this, to piggyback on what Dave Smith said, is frankly not what many of the MAGA voters thought they were signing up for. They thought America first actually meant America first. By the way, you also replaced the Maduro regime with the Maduro regime. Congratulations on that. It's also been now a week straight of pro-regime protests. Now you have roving gangs of Venezuelan militias that are kidnapping Americans. But again, I come back to the fundamental point, which is if you sign on to stuff like this, you're saying might makes right and the law of the jungle is back. What you're saying is China has a right to go into whatever smaller country they want and depose the leader and say we're doing it because we can and we have the right to do it and we have bigger guns and there's nothing you can do to stop it. So they're never going to address that fundamental question, which is why do we have a right? Do we actually believe in international law or was that all a joke? Are we rolling the clock back to the 1700s and the 1800s and we're going super primitive style here? And I think the answer to that is yes, they want to go super primitive style.
So the political issue that I personally care most about, besides, with the exception of tribalism, that's probably number one, but number two is foreign policy. And I thought this was an interesting exchange recently on Piers Morgan in response to Trump's bold, not just Venezuela. I mean, he's been threatening Greenland and generally becoming more active as an aggressor, as a global aggressor. This is a response to that. And there are people who obviously support Trump, and there are plenty, even on the right, that aren't very happy with this increased level of aggression. I'm particularly interested in foreign policy for both self-interest reasons as well as for ethical reasons. And there's a quite large portion of populists on both sides of the aisle that say, well, to hell with that ethical stuff. America first, what's in our interest? And even when it seems to be in our interest, it often isn't. So one of the things that I think people don't quite understand about foreign policy is how large the benefits are for successful aggression. Most humans operate in a world where we accept norms, where we intuitively want to feel like we're good people, and all manner of aggression that may come to mind is pretty much immediately dismissed as something that we shouldn't do. We know from either just our good upbringing or from religious principles, wherever we get our values from, we know intuitively that if you see a pretty woman walking down the street, just because you're stronger than her doesn't mean that you should take force into the matter. We understand that as individuals, but when you get to the level of someone like Vladimir Putin, of Donald Trump, if you are leading a nation and you have the power to use military aggression to take over either other lands, other people, other resources, it's basically thievery. Right. It's but not thievery of, you stole a candy bar, you stole a Louis Vuitton bag. No, you can steal entire nations. You can steal entire peoples. You can steal their land's natural resources. And when you steal it, like, that becomes yours. It's not like a one-time thing. Right. If you can take over land and control who runs it and make them do whatever you want, that's not a one-time steal. That's you've stolen their labor force. You've stolen their government. They work for you forever. It's almost like stealing a company. Imagine I could, and this is why in business, because I have a master's degree in business, one of the things that they talked about was political risk in terms of making investments on an international scale. If you go and you do work in Canada, if you start a company in the United States or somewhere in Europe or China, there's a certain level of stability that you can expect there. Now, China may steal your intellectual property, but you don't have to worry about physical force from gangs or the government straight up taking your business from you. But that could happen, right? Like, it doesn't happen in the United States because we have a good system of government. But it's theoretically possible to say, hey, Mark Zuckerberg, I think you have a pretty good company, and I'd like to have it, and I have guns, and you and your engineers work for me. That happens in smaller nations. And when that happens in smaller nations, if their government nationalizes your industry, which, to be fair, happened with oil in Venezuela, if they steal your stuff, the United States is generally not going to go to war for your private enterprise loss. But anyway, the reason I bring it up is you could either work as hard as Elon Musk to, regardless of how you feel about him, to be at the position he's at, to be the richest man in the world and have a large stake in some very valuable companies. Or you could walk behind him with a gun and say, I'm more powerful than you, so therefore you're going to do what I say. And what I'm saying is give me all your resources, right? That's a much easier way to amass power. And what I'm trying to do is just showcase the fact. So for instance, the value of a house, right? The cost of housing is very expensive. The value of a house could be, let's say, $300,000. What's the value of a neighborhood, right? A neighborhood of 50 houses, right? What's the value of a city's worth of houses and real estate and land and all the businesses on that land, right? That the total household income, right? Basically the GDP of that section of land, right? We're talking a lot of money for just not only one house, but one neighborhood, one city. If you, with war, can say, okay, I'm Vladimir Putin, I'm gonna steal your whole country, and now your country is now going to do whatever I say that benefits me, and I can tax you at whatever rate I want to tax you. I can draft your young men into my wars so that you guys go fight and die to get me even more power, right? Like the amount of value that can come from stealing a whole, not just house, one house can give you $100,000 value, stealing a whole nation and all their resources, and they do whatever you say you let them. They do whatever you let them do. Like it's hard to fathom how much value that is. That's the best business. If you're not ethical, that's the best business on earth, is taking land by theft. And the only reason you can't do it is if a foreign power is more powerful than you and stops you from doing it. That's it. It's the test is a might makes right test. Am I strong enough to pull this off? Most of us don't think that way. Most of us are good people. We don't think about the power metrics at play. And I think that's one of the, and I'm not saying this is good ethically, but I think that's one of the things that makes Trump so dangerous is he's not tied to norms. Most presidents, again, normal people, we go, okay, what's the intent of the system? How are things supposed to work? What are the laws? Right. And we try to operate in that area of normalcy. Trump says, who can stop me? Right? I understand what we're supposed to do. I understand norms. If I do what I'm not supposed to do, what are the consequences? Who can stop me? Do they have an interest in stopping me? Right? These types of almost psychopathic questions are very important. And you want to be frank with you, you want your leaders, you want your CEOs, you want your presidents, you want people to be able to think like that. Now, you hope they're ethical enough to not do anything you would be ashamed of. You hope they act in your interest and not their own interest. Can I say those things about Trump? No, but I do think it's a good thing to be able to think that way, because when you are able to think that way, you can understand and add that layer of analysis when you're watching the moves of other foreign powers like Vladimir Putin, like Xi. Not that Xi is similar to Vladimir Putin, they're different, but still, it's good to be able to see the world through the might makes right perspective. Now, here's the situation we're in, and I think the lie, I wouldn't call it a lie. I think it's incorrect, and I think it's important to make a distinction between when people are incorrect and when they're lying. So I think the untruth that a lot of people believe, especially on the right, but even populists on the left, is, well, since the benefits are so great, if it's successful, right? If we do steal a nation, if we can steal a nation at very little cost to American lives, well, it's in our interest to do so. And at a very basic level, that's true. And the problem is it's highly risky, right? So you can basically scale all of this down to the individual level, right? So let's say I'm in a room and there's 20 other guys in a room. We could just operate with the norms that we all understand and everything's fine. Or I could say, I don't like being equal to you guys. So how about us 20 guys in this room? We make this a might makes right free for all. We're going to make this a big fight, and whoever comes out on top will be able to enslave and force the other 19 men to work for him. Now, let's say John Jones is in the room, okay? Or whoever you think the most powerful man, the best fighter in the world is, right? If John Jones is in the room, the mistake is to think, oh, okay, well, since I'm John Jones, it's in my interest to start a might makes right competition because I'm clearly the most powerful person in this room. If it came down to a fair fight, no one's going to compete with me. And that's the United States position, right? There's no other nation on earth that can stand toe to toe with us. But what happens if you do that is the other 19 guys in the room go, well, if it's forced to be a might makes right competition, we don't want to fight John Jones one-on-one. How about we all agree to group up on John Jones? And at that point, you still lose, right? So even if you are the strongest person, even if you are the baddest man in the room, it's still a great risk to start a competition. Now, it can work. And this is what I was talking about with the benefit of war. And this is what almost happened in Nazi Germany, right? If you turn a blind eye to aggression, say Vladimir Putin, say like a Nazi Germany, if I take one nation, okay, now I can draft that nation's young people into my army and use them to take another nation, right? So I started off as one nation. I acted as an aggressor against a smaller nation, like the United States is doing with Venezuela. And through that act of aggression, I get more powerful. And we go, okay, that's in our interest, right? And then I draft their young men into my army. We take the second nation. Now we're 3 nations worth of power, right? And as long as I have a good enough infrastructure to make it so that none of the people we conquered can really organize a resistance to us, now we're 3 nations powerful, right? And you can see how this snowballs. The bigger we get, and eventually that snowball will be so big that none of the other snow, if it grouped up, could even challenge it, right? So if you're not in the snowball and you see that snowball rolling down the hill, what you do is you say, okay, we need to group up now to stop this, because if we wait any longer, we will not be able to stop this. And that's what happened with Nazi Germany. And, they decided to play that aggressive game. They thought they could beat John Jones. The rest of the world, organized against them. And fortunately, we won. But imagine we didn't win. If we lost, well, it's pretty much game over. We'd all be ran by the Germans. So there's a great potential reward for this type of aggression, but the cost is potentially devastating, and it leads to a lot of blood. So it's like if you're in a room and you are bigger than everyone, it's like, sure, there's a chance I could win, and I could decide to just make this at any point you can do that. Right? If you're at work and your manager says something to you, he thinks he has control. If you put a knife to his neck, you have control, right? Like at any point we could make any situation in life a pure might makes right competition. And maybe you beat your manager until, again, the greater force comes as the police force, right? But if you're the head of the police force, if you're the head of the United States military, there is no individual third party that is more powerful than you that can stop you. And now you're only limited by your ethics or by things I'm talking about now, the game theory of if you decide to make this a ugly might makes right game, the other players, even though none of them individually is stronger than you, they are collectively stronger than you. And so even though the United States is the strongest nation on earth, a lot of our strength comes from the fact that we're the leader of the free world and we have very powerful allies behind us, right? If we alienate them with our behavior, we're not strong enough to take on the whole world. We're not even close. We're the strongest individual, but we're not. It's like, Elon Musk is very rich, but he's not richer than everybody else in the United States put together, right? So like that's kind of like the United States. We can be the best, but we're still not going to be able to deal with the rest of the world. Now, another thing that kind of adds a little bit of security and another large level of risk to the equation is nuclear weapons, right? So for every advanced nation that has a large set of nuclear weapons, if we do start a might makes right, I'm just going to bully you with my superior military. Nukes are basically the ultimate suicide bomb to say, okay, I'm not going to lose it. Before I lose, I'm going to blow you up with the suicide bomb. And I know you have the nuclear weapon too. So you're going to hit me and basically everybody dies. So that is also a good thing to reduce war, to reduce maybe lower value wars, because it's just not worth that risk. But then you have the downside of if we do make the mistake of really pressing each other, somebody might pull a trigger, and then you really do have very bad global consequences for Earth, not just for humanity. So the might makes right argument is the truth of nature. If I do have a stronger military, then my enemies are willing to gather against me. I can take over the whole planet. But when you start to make that movement, just like Nazi Germany did, the rest of the world will see it coming. They will group up against you. So even if you are the strongest, you're not safe. And so even though it may seem like it's in our interest to just start playing this dangerous game, again, would you behave like that in real life? Would you, see a pretty woman and get aggressive if you're stronger than her? Would you, hold a knife to your manager's throat because you don't think the cops can get here in time, right? Like this type of mentality is very clearly evil and wrong when you think at the individual level. When you think at the level of nations, people start to abstract it and say, oh, okay, well, it's okay. We just killed, a few hundred of their soldiers for oil because now the prices of our groceries will be lower. And you just kind of abstract the way that you just killed a bunch of people for some oil and a cheaper cost of grocery. Like you can't do that, right? So I think it's very clearly wrong when you bring it to the individual level. When you bring it at the national level, it can seem good in the short run because the benefit of aggression are so great. But the consequences of that is you will lose your leadership power. You will unite the world against you. And we have all of that now. We take it for granted. We don't understand the consequences of something like the dollar ceasing to become the reserve currency in the world because we've alienated our allies so much. There's so much power that comes from leading a large group that we only, especially on the conservative side, but even on the liberal side too, the popular sides of both sides of the aisle, they see the cost of being the leaders of the free world. They don't see the benefits that we get of being the leaders of the free world. So I'm gonna close this by saying might does make right. We are really in the jungle in terms of if we decide to anybody that decides to play that game, you cannot stop them with arguments. You have to stop them by beating them at that game. If someone says, hey, I'm just going to beat you up and take everything you have, you're not going to be able to argue your way out of that. You were simply strong enough to defend yourself or you're not. So anybody can force a might makes right game, but that's a very bad game to play. Society and civilization and humanity as a whole, and even every individual nation is better off not playing this game unless they could be confident that they're going to win. But again, the more confident you're going to win is going to create more enemies, and it's going to get ugly anyway. And in reality, there's nukes involved now, so you really can't win. So someone will nuke you before they let you take them over. So it's a very dangerous to play. It's true that the benefits are great, but we should not be doing that. The civilization and the respect that we have to be a nation among nations, not a nation above nations, that's what gives us the stability and the peace that we've enjoyed post-World War II. We start acting like this. We encourage Russia to start acting like this, China to start acting like this. We abandon this rules-based international order, and it's going to start looking more like most of human history, right? Like this period of peace post-World War II is not normal. It's not normal. What's normal is pretty much constant fighting. And a lot of people will think, oh, it's a foreigner thing. Like you think white people weren't at war with each other in Europe, right? Like race was only an issue when, people of color got involved. Like if it's all white people, it's not like the French and the Germans and the British are going to be at peace because they're all white. Like there's going to be perpetual conflict if we cannot agree on a base level of international respect. And this is a very dangerous escalation where the United States basically becomes, and we've become like Russia. We've become probably worse than China on the aggression front. And our allies are kind of in a tough spot. Whether they stick with us because we've been a great long-term partner and maybe this is a short-term thing, or are they going to need to say, we were with the West, we were with the United States, but the United States has left the West, and they've started behaving like barbarians who are just aggressive because they have the power to do so, and they break ranks with us. And America first, but we save so much money on NATO, we save so much. Where in the past, if we had any issue with like 9/11, we can bring the whole civilized world into our war with us, invoke Article 5, I think we're the only ones who ever invoked it, right? We go to war, everybody comes in. Now we got a problem. You're on your own, right? You're John Jones on your own. Or before we were John Jones with, you know, Stipe and with DC and, you know, with, you know, some very strong allies with George St. Pierre. And then we're like, oh, well, because we had to maintain relationships with George St. Pierre, forget it. I just want to be John Jones alone. Now you think you're stronger. You're not, right? Allies provide us a great deal of our power. Most of our power comes from leading a large group of people. And that's how almost every company is run, right? Like it's not a CEO first. You don't have CEO first companies, right? The CEO hires other people. They generate value. The CEO leads that group of people, and they reap the benefits of everyone else's work. That's what the United States does at a global scale. And there's a cost, right? That's like the CEO, like, well, why do you pay your workers? You know, it's like, what are they doing for me? It's like, well, they're why the CEO has the money in the first place. I'm not saying that it's exactly the same at the geopolitical scale, but it is related. Like we pay a cost to be leaders, but we get benefits from that as well. So again, I think it's in our interest to be peaceful, because even though we're the strongest, we're certainly far from being beyond reproach from the rest of the world should they rightfully align against us. And I say rightfully so because the way we're behaving is objectively not defensible. The only thing you could say is I like it because we may have gotten some oil, and sure, we can go and invade a foreign nation and kill a bunch of people and steal it for ourselves. But at that point, are you just a Somali pirate who can steal if they can get away with it, right? This is not who we want to be. And it may be in your interest in the short run to do that, but in the long run, you're playing the dangerous game that will backfire.